Hi and welcome to Module 2 in this self-help program for depression. In this module we will introduce a method of conquering depression that forms the basis for this self-help program, namely behavioral activation. As previously mentioned, behavioral activation aims at breaking a vicious circle that encompasses both your behavior, your thoughts, your feelings and your bodily sensations. We can say that when one is depressed, then one's stuck. And behavioral activation is a way of getting started again. Behavioral activation is aimed at, your behavior. This behavioral change can have positive effects on all the other aspects. Let's take a look at an example. Let's say that you, for some reason, have gotten depressed. What triggered the depression is not important in this context. The depression caused you to feel tired and weary. You might stop doing things you previously enjoyed because you have lost interest or the desire to do these activities. You just don't feel like it. Before you were depressed, you might have enjoyed being with friends, playing the guitar, working out, taking walks, etc. But as the depression progressed, then these activities have been superseded by inactivity, where you might spend a lot of time alone, maybe in bed, ruminating or procrastinating. You may feel that you need to relax, recharge your batteries, but unlike others, your mood and energy levels doesn't get replenished by inactivity. Instead, your situation develops in the wrong direction, where you might feel you get worse over time, not better. And in a sense, this isn't surprising, because prolonged inactivity blocks off the positive experiences that previously gave you joy and energy. We can say that positive experiences have an antidepressive effect, and that everyone needs positive experiences in their life. In addition to removing positive experiences, inactivity can cause an increase in negative experiences. It might lead you into financial problems if you don't pay your bills. Your overall health might worsen if you don't get any exercise or healthy meals. Your home might turn into a mess. It might take a toll on your relationships. You might lose an opportunity at work, just to name a couple of examples. We can ask ourselves, who wouldn't get depressed if their positive antidepressive experiences were taken away, while they had to live with a host of unpleasant burdens? And with this we can complete our vicious circle, because the lack of positive experiences and the increased burden makes the depression itself worse. Now you're stuck. With this perspective, the triggering cause of the original depression isn't really that important. What's important and at the center of the depression is the self-sustaining vicious circle, and the goal of behavioral activation is to break this process. Another variant of this circle entails that you might be very active instead of inactive. Let's say your day is completely swamped with stressful chores and duties that you don't particularly enjoy. In this case, then the problem isn't inactivity, but that your day is completely filled by the wrong type of activity, where you get few or none of the positive antidepressant experiences as a result of being too busy, even though you might not experience an increase in negative experiences. We'll talk more about this later in the program, especially in Module 6. Of all the aspects of the cognitive diamond, behavioral activation primarily deals with behavior, and there is a good reason for this. We can ask ourselves, of all these different aspects, which do I have the most control over? For example, do we have direct control over our feelings? If that was the case, then we wouldn't have depression in the first place. Unfortunately, many people still try to directly control their feelings, in vain. I gotta be happy. I have to stop these feelings. I need to push away this negativity. Be positive, etc. In fact, research suggests that people who struggle to mentally control their feelings are worse off than people who accept what they are feeling in the here and now. The same argument can be put forth regarding your thoughts and your bodily sensations. We just cannot control how we feel or what we think in the here and now. Acceptance of the things we cannot change in the here and now is an important part of behavioral activation. But acceptance in the here and now is not the same as resignation. The goal of behavioral activation is to plan for and carry out positive activities that you value. The changes in behavior can have a positive effect on the entire diamond. Said differently, one flips behavior on its head. From this scenario, you feel well, so you might do something fun or enjoyable. Into, you seek out something that might be fun or enjoyable in order to feel better. The first of these are what's called retroactive behavior. Your behavior follows your mood. This is the standard affair. The other is called proactive, meaning that you first change behavior that can have a positive effect on your mood later on. The great thing about behavior is that it's something we have control over. Take this example. John has been depressed for several months and has isolated himself completely. One day, John decides to try to turn things around. He calls a friend that he hasn't talked to for a long time and pays him a visit. This isn't something John really feels like doing, but he hopes that he can help him feel better in the long run. His behavior is proactive. This is an example of control. John doesn't feel like visiting his friend, but he does it anyway in an attempt to feel better. Another part of behavioral activation is to avoid destructive, repetitive thoughts called rumination, and we'll talk more about that later in the program. Finally, we would like to point out that behavioral activation is one of the best documented treatments for depression. Researchers have looked closely at depressed people who engage in behavioral activation and compared them with depressed who receive no treatment for depression, or those on a wait list, or those who receive another form of psychotherapy, or those given a pharmacological treatment. And the scientific consensus has emerged. Behavioral activation works, just as well as other forms of treatment for depression and better than those who receive no treatment. You might also ask yourself, but what about self-help treatments? Does behavioral activation work when people go through a program without professional help? And here the answer is a definite yes. And that's why we made this program, so that you can help yourself with scientific techniques. We can also mention that psychologists use behavioral activation to increase quality of life in a wide range of populations. For instance, with the elderly, with cancer survivors, people with chronic illnesses, and also regular healthy individuals who just want more out of life. This is because behavioral activation is not only about getting rid of a disease, e.g. depression, but also about promoting health and well-being in general. Follow us further into the program to learn more about how to use behavioral activation. You will find a link to the next module in the video description. See you later.